Hey guys, welcome back. In the last video, I showed you how to build the Yixiang 48 volt DIY battery kit with the JK BMS. In today's video, we're going to be top balancing, but before we get to that, I want to show you something. Check it out, the Yixiang white box. Just like the original box, but it's white. How cool is that? Alright, let's take a closer look. I installed this light underneath my shelf or my workbench, so hopefully the over the workbench video scenes will be much brighter. Alright, so my first box, they did not include these insulated washers, so that looks like they're including these insulated washers now, which is really good. So you got 2 screws on each PCB, but it looks like they removed these middle screws, so they're just not even putting them in. Another thing, the comms cables for the BMS harness, they come disconnected. So this has to connect to the comms PCB board, which is down there below the BMS on the bottom of the faceplate, and also the main battery P- here that connects over to the breaker right there, down there actually, comes disconnected as well. And this is by design. I guess some people, I don't know, complain, not really complain, but they just wanted it to be like that, so it's easier to disassemble, I guess. I don't know, I don't see any benefit, but there's no other difference in this box. There's no other physical improvements. It's just the white color. What am I talking about? There's a huge difference. Look at the perforations in the pressure plate. So that's different. The latches are fully exposed. They put the holes back here. I don't like that because you can lose bolts in there. They can fall down in there. But at least this one's still covered up. Please guys, do not make the holes in this one. Keep this one solid. And these if you can't. But at least you can access the latches. Back here as well, perforations. Still good support for the cells, but I'm guessing they did that for weight savings. So yeah, that's the major change with the box, it looks like. But this will get dirty. Just like anything that's white, it will collect dust, it'll collect smudges of whatever on your hands. It's going to get onto the box. So if you're trying to keep things clean, stick with the black box. So, I ordered this box with the additional casters. One thing that's really cool about these, aside from the color scheme, it's really cool, is these have built-in brakes. And the rubber stopper is going to come down and it's going to lift the battery box, or at the very least apply pressure against the ground, and now the caster cannot move. So if you want the additional casters, they're going to cost you about $40 additional. To install the casters, insert the threaded rod with the Allen key facing outward into the caster. Tighten the caster until it's flush with the box surface. Thread the nut onto the threaded rod stub inside the box. The casters articulate well even when the box is fully loaded with cells. Cool. Let's apply the brakes and see if it works. Right? Oh yeah, check it out. It does not move. They recommend with the casters, the wheels, no more than 3, with the feet that come with the box by default, these little tiny feet, 4, no more than 4. The other thing they informed me about, the warehouse. They have a warehouse in the US now, I think it's in Texas. It'll be fully stocked in September. So you'll be able to order cells from the US at a slightly higher cost, but shipping will be much faster. Okay, so they told me that the perforations inside the box are for heat dissipation and also for weight savings. Okay, So we got the Yixiang box on top with the JK BMS, and we got the Apex box down on the bottom with the Seplos BMS. Both these batteries are relatively close in voltage. This is 53.11 and this is 53.27. We're charging only from solar right now. This battery is getting 11.79 amps. This one's getting just 5 amps. Right, so my solar system can only produce about 50 amps of charging output during the best time of the day. So we're going to get some grid juice coming in because power is cheap right now, so I don't mind doing it. We're going to help speed charge these batteries. If I put this inverter into standby mode, it'll automatically start charging from grid, and we'll get 40 amps of charging output from this inverter. Okay, so we got 40 amps coming out of this inverter, and we got 20 amps coming from solar. So with JK BMS, we're getting 22.2 amps. And our Seplos BMS, we're getting 33.58 amps. Look at the state of charge on this. This is not accurate. Once we reach the reset state of charge conditions, the state of charge will be accurate. We're going to come back when the batteries have reached 55.2 volts, and we'll see where we're at when we're floating, and then we'll go ahead and switch the battery to the small charger and do our top balance. Garage plugs tripped. While I was hooking up the laptop to monitor the Seplos BMS, the grid inverter shut off. So I figured the inverter had reached its return voltage limit and shut down. But then I went and looked closer and check this out. The grid icon is gone. So currently I have the grid connection plugged into a 20 amp circuit in my house. I'm charging at 40 amps, which is about 2100 watts, which is within the limit of a 20 amp circuit, which is I think 2400 watts. Yeah, I think it's just too hot and it ran for too long. I think it tripped the breaker. Okay, now the grid icon came back, so we got good power to the inverter, and I got my watt meter plugged in, so we can see what we're actually pulling when we're pulling 40 amps of charging current. Oh yeah, we're right at almost 2400 watts. So yeah, I think 40 amps is a little too much. We'll change this down to 30. Okay, now we're pulling 30 amps, and we're at 2000 watts on the outlet. This is a 20 amp outlet. This stupid meter is only rated for a 15 amp outlet. That's why it says overload. Alright, for some reason I thought 40 amps was 2100 watts. So I got the Seplos hooked up to the laptop here, and we're currently at 54 volts, so we're getting close. And our cell deviation is at 10 millivolts, so that's pretty good. In JK BMS, we're still pushing 27 amps, and look at our deviation, 21 millivolts. So the balancer on the JK BMS isn't configured to start until the average cell voltage, or single cell voltage rather, reaches 3.40. So yeah, I would expect that this pack, even though it's getting lower current, will have a higher deviation than the Seplos, because this has actually been balanced. It's the battle of the balancers. Okay, it's just after 7 p.m. and we've reached 55.2 volts. Sort of. Check it out. So the Seplos BMS is at 55.8 volts, and we're at 98%, and we're floating. It's just 30 milliamps deviation. Let's look at our JK BMS. 54.9 volts. We're barely pulling in any power, not even 1 amp hardly. Check that out. 230 millivolt deviation. Wow, the BMS has a lot of work to do. Okay, we're going to disconnect this from the charger and let the BMS get the deviation down to about 50 millivolts or so, and then we'll connect up the charger and then charge it the rest of the way. So the nice thing about this battery, all I have to do to disconnect it from the system is flip the breaker. Now we can let the BMS do its dirty work. Remember, when we built the battery, we did nothing to the cells. We did not capacity test them in any way. We just took them out of the cell boxes, threw them in the case, and built the battery. This is a test to see how well the JK BMS can handle the job. So we started with a deviation of 230 millivolts. We can see here the BMS is working on the cells, trying to balance them out. Notice there is no charge current coming into the battery. We are balancing down only. Notice the delta. It gets smaller and smaller as the BMS balances the cells. The lower the delta, the more balanced the cells are. A good delta, in my opinion, is less than 50 millivolts when the battery is fully charged. In the bulk area or nominal voltage range, it is not uncommon to see 20 millivolts or less. Any discrepancies in cell deviation will be revealed at higher charge and discharge rates. Okay, we've disconnected the battery from the solar system and we plugged in our 10 amp plug-in charger. Our delta is sitting at 4 millivolts, voltage 53, and we're at 98% state of charge. Hopefully we can get a good balance with this charger, and hopefully we won't have to bring out the Wampa. Alright guys, we are back and we've been attempting to top charge or top balance this pack for the whole day. And it looks like we finally are set up to make our final push run. Take a look. So we are currently sitting at 55 volts with just 11 millivolt deviation. That is excellent. We are well set up to do our final push and get our final top balance. So to get to this point, I had to do it 7 times about. I had to plug the charger in, let it charge up until it hit OVP, and then kick the charger out, charger stops, and then it balances down, and then basically rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And every time you do this, you're gonna have a higher settle voltage. So the first time I did it, and I'll show you pictures after this because I have a bit of a rant to go on. I don't want to bore you with charging and discharging. The first time I did it, it went up to, so we initially charged, speed charge to 55.2. If you can get to that point, then your cells are decently balanced. They're not completely trashed or anything. You should at least be able to get to that point, and that's right where the balancer should kick in at 3.40 volts per cell. So the first time I kicked the charger, it stopped at 53 volts. It just cut out because one of the cells ran away and hit OVP and kicked out the charger. So I let it settle down and then I kicked it again. Once the deviation gets down to about less than 50 millivolts, or the average cell voltage becomes lower than 3.40 where the balancer stops. If the balancer is not doing any work, then it's pointless. You got to start the charger again to keep the balancer active. If the balancer is not active, it's not doing any work, it's not balancing the pack. So you got to keep the voltage high enough. Second time I did it, it got a little higher, but I didn't really notice it. Every time I got to like 53 volts, I would see the deviation. I would take a screenshot, and initially it was like 200 millivolts deviation. And then as I kept doing this, charge, settle, charge, balance, I took a screenshot and I was comparing them, and I noticed that once we hit 55.2 volts, the deviation was at 100 millivolts. So we basically increased, we made 50% progress. And then what you're finally going to notice is all your voltages will settle down and they'll be above 3.40 volts. So once you're basically sitting and resting at 55 volts or higher, and you have a relatively low deviation of like 20 millivolts or less, then you're in a good position to make a final push. And that's doing everything with just this plug-in charger. I didn't want to use any special tools. I didn't want to use Wampa. I didn't want to use the Big Blue. So you haven't met Wampa yet, but we'll explain that later. There's different methods you could do this, and I don't know. I'd like to find out what the fastest method is, because the problem with this charger is once it kicks OVP, the charger won't restart. Some will and some won't. Like I have the same version of this charger, but the 12 volt version, and it will go into standby. It'll wait for the BMS to settle down and balance out, and then it'll restart. So you can just kind of plug it in and let it do its thing. But not with this one. Once it kicks out, it stays off. So I have to come out here, check the status of the balance, and then re-kick, plug it in, plug it out, start it up, start it back up again. But with my power supply, the Wampa, right, you could just apply a steady voltage. Now, as long as that voltage is below your carry voltage of your balancer, in this case 2 amps, then you can leave it on there, and you could do a target voltage of like 55.2, right, initially, and then set it for like half an amp, right? Because then you're going to have 1.5 amps left over for your balancer to do its work. If you're pushing more than 2 amps, then you're really not getting anywhere, because your balancer has to deal with that incoming current. So if you're doing an active charge balance, then it needs to be, your charge current needs to be less than your balance current. And so once you balance out at 55.2, then you can jump the voltage up to like 56, let it balance down, jump it up to 57, balance down, and finally 58, balance down. So I think the next battery I build will be with Wampa. I wanted to show you guys that you can do it with just a basic battery charger. The problem with this charger, this is a 58.4 volt charger, so it wants to charge the cells completely full to 3.65 volts per cell. And the problem with that is it just goes for broke, right? You have to rely on the BMS to go OVP to manage that charger. But with the power supply, you can set your voltage, you can set your current, you can incrementally step it up. So here we go, flip the breaker and start the charging. We're going to keep an eye on our delta and also the battery voltage and our delta here. So I'm going for broke. We're going to see if we can get up to at least 57 volts before the delta gets over 100. Once it gets to over 100, maybe 150, you should kind of shut the charger off and let it balance down, because there's no point in going further than that. It's just making the BMS have to do a lot more work. Initially I had like 300. I was like, wow, this is really bad. But the JK has handled this really well. It's way faster than the Ceplos. Alright, so we're at 55.6 already, and we're still looking good on our deviation, just 23 millivolts. So let's bet. How high will it go, guys? Do you think it will go 57? 57.5? What do you think? Looking at our cell voltage is high. The high voltage, the high cell is 3.51. Our delta 40 millivolts, so it's creeping up. We're coming up on 56 volts, pushing 9.6 amps. All right, we've passed 56 volts. .61 on our deviation, so cell number 2 might have a runner. We might have a runner here, guys. 3.55. But I'm even satisfied with this. If you can basically sit there and have a resting voltage of 55.2, that's where you're going to float at anyway. So if you can float for 2 hours, when you're floating, you're not going to be pushing 9 amps. You're going to be pushing, less than 1 amp. So the deviation is going to stay in check. So if you can sit there and float for 2 hours at 55.2, you're good. So I consider this, for all intents and purposes, balanced. However, I want to get perfect. I want to go all the way to the top, 3.65 volts per cell. All right, cell number 2, we've got a runner, 3.63. We're going to hit OVP soon. OVP is 3.65. We hit 57 volts. Oh, there it is, kicked out. 57 volts, not bad. We're probably 2 more iterations, 2 more cycles from being perfectly top balanced. So we're going to wait for this to balance down, and then we'll come back. Okay, you can see we ended around 130 millivolts, and that's not too much work for the JK. When I was like cycle 1, cycle 2, the third attempt, we were having like 200, 300 millivolts deviation, and to balance down with that much deviation, it took like 2 hours. So each iteration you do is going to take less time, right? The first time it's going to take maybe 3 hours, say, then 2.5. Then 2, then 1, then 30 minutes until you finally top balance. Alright, we're back. Went inside, had some dinner, and did a little video work, and came back out and check it out. We're sitting at just 8 millivolt deviation, and we're sitting at 55.8 volts. That's really good. I think this time we're gonna get it. Okay, we are back, and we are looking like 7 millivolts deviation, and we're sitting at 56 volts. Let's give it a go. Deviation's looking pretty good. $57.5. Hopefully the charger starts scaling back. There it is, 8.4 amps, looking good. If we can get the charger to scale back, then I think we're good. Cell voltages are getting a little high. I forgot to change the OVP crap. Maybe I could do it really quick. Because this charger charges exactly at the 3.65, so I have to do 3.70. Just for the initial, I'll never charge this high. 58 volts. Just for the initial balance, I will never charge this high. I always charge to 55.2 or 3.45 volts per cell. 1.5 amps. Come on, can we get a finish? $3.654. Got 1 amp coming in. 3.655. A little high, but it's okay. 3.658. Oh, can we do it? I don't know. So close. I'm watching the cell voltage just like really close. 3.66. Just 0.4 amps. Oh, 0.0 amps. Come on, 58.19 volts. Just barely trickling. I think we're gonna get it. There it is, good enough. No errors. So we'll go back in here, put this back to 3.65. We'll call it a day. Okay, I'm very happy with this battery. Easy build and easy balance. You could probably balance this battery in, I would say, 24 hours. Maybe 2 days, worst case scenario, if you have to babysit it. But yeah, I think we're good. We're gonna put this baby into service. Okay, so one problem I've noticed with the JK BMS after running this box for about a month, the state of charge is not very accurate. The only way to calibrate the state of charge is to reset it to 100%, is to fully charge it. And I think it has to hold the fully charge for about 30 minutes or so before it resets. If it sits anywhere between 20 and 60%, it just gets worse and worse with the state of charge. So it's always best to use a shunt or something. Alright guys, that's all I got for this video. See you on the next one.